let's start from the beginning. Can you share a bit about your journey? What led you into the field of economics?
Definitely. So I've always been interested in human behavior, in
Hmm.
understanding what drives human behavior.
Yeah.
And I actually started first with physics,
Hmm.
maths, in
Wow.
understanding, like, hey, how come we can predict everything in detail over there? Although there are limits there as well, right? If when you talk about quantum mechanics, then suddenly not everything is predictable.
Hmm.
You know things at a probabilistic way, and when you look into behavior, animal behavior, but also definitely human behavior, things become even more probabilistic, if I say so. And then I got to know the field of economics in a way, um, where the people who founded the field, they started out as mathematicians. So basically what it means is they came up first with very theoretical models,
Hmm.
and in those models they predict human behavior with the precision of an atom. So the same way we have
Wow.
the law of gravity, we can predict behavior of human beings. Now, at least that's the theory.
Hmm.
Um, it turns out that things are a bit more complicated than that.
They
So
always are.
yes,
Mhm.
and that's how I got curious into economics
Mm.
quite early,
Mhm.
uh, while still being a student. So in my very first years, in no no late years of high school, first year of college, I become very interested in economics. But again, not because I'm interested in economics,
Yeah. Yeah.
because how most people understand the term
Yeah.
economics.
Yeah. They think
I
about business and economy and money, but really it's the science of understanding behavior.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
So you kind of picked it as a way to understand the world around you and not limited to the financial side, let's say.
Um, that's the yeah. I
Mm.
would say that's the case indeed. So for me, it's much more a way to understand human behavior in general
Mm.
than to give you an idea, to give the audience an idea, is that I was as interested in understanding purchase behavior as I'm interested in understanding how you structure your sentences.
Mm. Mm. Wow. This is very interesting because you walked into University of Amsterdam with a really broad curiosity about the world. Because usually people put themselves in a box of I'm in the faculty of business or sociology, and you walked in being interested with everything. Which I mean, that already explains to me in many ways why you succeeded in starting the Veylinx. And I'm just wondering, what were the thinkers that inspired you early on in your journey? The economists, the scientists, perhaps.
By far, number one scientist who inspired me was Noam Chomsky.
Oh wow, yes, yeah.
Noam Chomsky being basically the founding cognitive psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he gave me a perspective on how the human mind works, that allows you to have a much more scientific view and understanding, but also being very humble at the same time. That there's so much out there that you cannot understand,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
actually you might want to embrace the fact that there's very little you can actually predict. But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean there's no structure to how human behave, and also how humans think. So
Mm-hmm.
Noam Chomsky definitely was a very early inspirer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Later on, there have been other academics that have inspired me. So within the field of economics, the name Daniel Kahneman is definitely one name that got my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, so Daniel Kahneman, being known as the founding father of behavioral economics, his early studies within, he's originally a psychologist, not an economist, but he was the one that basically shaped the field of behavioral economics as we
Mm-hmm.
know it today.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And I can name quite a few other figures, but these two
Yeah,
names definitely.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure there are plenty. And I remember the debate between Chomsky and Foucault. It took place in the Netherlands in Eindhoven,
Yes,
perhaps you know, which is a cool, epic tangent back to the Netherlands where we are right now.
and
Yeah.
in fact, Foucault. Now that you mention him, I got interested in postmodernism as a result of that, to see to what extent postmodernism can be a source of a deep understanding of behavioral science as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the main trail of the discussion, what inspired you after 10 years of academic journey to start Veylinx, and how did the company evolve as an idea from the conception to what it is now, what it became?
So, um, so Veylinx, the way it came about from that interest in human behavior,
Hmm.
and one aspect I really did not understood the impact of it until much later age, and also much later time, only during my PhD. I got confronted with the question of how do you predict how much someone is willing to pay for an item.
Yep.
And it was like not even a research topic. It was like whatever, and then
Hmm.
I had a colleague of mine who mentioned to me that a well-established publicly traded company with humongous budgets launched a new product and it completely failed. They couldn't predict that people weren't interested in buying it. And I was surprised as a behavior economist. I'm I'm like how could you not see that coming?
Yeah.
And what a
Yeah.
waste of money and resources. And this is when I started asking the question, like, how did they do their research? Turns out to be the old-fashioned survey research
Mm.
that we are all familiar with coming out of marketing and psychology. None of the tools that's already being developed in behavioral economics. And this is when I got a lot more interested in seeing, hey, wait a minute, uh, shouldn't I be raising awareness within the real world, that there are way better ways, tools out there to
Hmm.
understand how much people are
Hmm.
willing to pay for products. And that's how I started Veylinx,
Hmm.
initially as an academic project, um, but clearly early on it became clear that it has commercial potential as well. um, I wasn't the one to come up with the methodology. I wasn't the one even to run the first studies. It was around already for many decades, but I was the very first one to bring it to companies, for
Yeah.
companies to actually use it to validate concepts.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, your case is very interesting to me because, forgive me, but sometimes I have a certain stereotype of people in academia, especially in business, who never have the skin in the game. But your example is very inspiring to me because you excelled in academia, you learned a lot, and you saw an opportunity and you brought something new to the table that was very useful for businesses. And I'm just wondering, say before you mentioned the example of a public traded company that spent ridiculous amounts of money to identify pricing. Someone who would be critical would say, isn't it pretty straightforward? You cover the costs and then you see how far you can pull up the premium. But I guess it's not that simple.
It's definitely not that simple. I
Yeah.
mean, um, economists already know that the optimal price should be based on value. It has nothing to do with cost. Cost only
Hmm.
determines whether it's viable as a business or not.
Hmm.
All you know is that if you exceed the cost, then at least it's viable as a business.
Yeah.
Uh, but the actual optimal price,
Hmm.
it could be that you're making 90% margins, maybe 95%
Yeah.
profit margins. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with uh,
Yeah.
the relationship between there's almost no relation between the cost and the optimal price. So, and this is already a bias that exists out there, because a lot of people are brought up with the idea that when you have an item, especially if it is a tangible physical item, like an apple, for example,
Yeah.
and I'm going to sell this apple, I just want to make a certain margin on top of that, having that as an objective. While that's not how you should be looking at it. You should
Mm.
be looking at what's the value, like how far
Mm.
is it willing to go, and also understand that the consumer or the buyer in general doesn't know the cost in most cases.
Yeah.
The perfect
Yeah.
example, being software. Software
Yeah.
marginal cost is practically zero, but it can be really, really expensive. So how does that work?
Yeah.
Well, that's because it's purely based on value-based pricing.
Hmm. Yeah. And from that, I remember I watched the lecture. Unfortunately, I wasn't the present when you did the lecture in the University of Amsterdam for the business faculty, but I watched it online. And I think it would be very interesting for the audience to hear the unique methodology that you came up with of having the skin in the game when trying to figure out the pricing. Could you further elaborate on that?
Definitely. So, for those who are not familiar with the Veylinx methodology, is based on Vickrey. And Vickrey is a famous economist. His full name is William Vickrey. He won the Nobel Prize quite some time ago in the 90s. And in the 60s, he made this seminal contribution where he said, you know what, if we can, everyone is familiar with an auction environment.
Yep.
And usually you enter an auction to sell something or to buy something. And the one auction that we're all familiar are with is the English auction. And the English auction goes as follows. You have an item, somebody shouts out the highest bid, and
Yep.
then you try to overbid him. And then until no one else places a bid higher, then you sell it to that person. Now, Vickrey said, you know what? We can use this exact situation, but instead of shouting out your bid, you're gonna put that amount, you're gonna have one chance to win the item, you're gonna put the amount, how much you're bidding, in an envelope. So it's a sealed bid,
Hmm.
which you can only place one bid. That's it. You have only one chance. And what he demonstrated that under those circumstances, and if it's also a real auction, so it's not hypothetical, it's a real auction, he demonstrated that now you have an incentive in that one bid to reflect your maximum willingness to pay. And there was one catch to all of this, which really, like this one twist that really incentivizes you to reveal like your maximum, your true value. Because you have normally in a normal auction zero incentive to
Yeah.
reveal your maximum, right?
Yeah.
Why would you ever
Yeah.
bid your maximum in an auction? Because that means by default you're not gonna gain anything, right? If your value for a gold ring is 1,000 euros, the
Yeah.
last thing you're gonna
Is
do
bet
is
€1,000.
1,000 euros.
Yeah.
However, what if the auction involved you paying always something that is lower than your own bid? And that's the trick that Vickrey came up with. And that's what also made him win the Nobel Prize in economics. And that's the Vickrey method, and that's the method that Veylinx
Mm.
is known for applying.
Hmm. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but would it be correct to say that, say you want to learn how to price this bottle, and you gather 100 people and you give them $10 each? So pretty much you create a little market in itself, like a little microcosm where people all try to preserve their self-interest, and based on that, there is an equilibrium at which you say, okay, here people are ready to price it at this, no higher, no lower. Therefore, we find this balance, and that's how we price it.
Yes and no.
Hmm.
First of all, we don't give people money. Because the moment you give people money to place a bid, you don't actually know how much they truly have to spend. So what we always do is we have them pay from their own money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So we don't give them the money. I know that in academia, the way you run a study is you give people money and then you ask them to place a bid,
yeah,
which is perfectly fine because you keep it pretty artificial. But companies out there, real companies, if you but even for the small entrepreneur, they want to know how much they can truly
yeah,
get out of the market. Then you have what's called measuring the demand curve. So everyone who has studied economics, even in high school, has seen a demand curve, right?
yeah,
Like a downward sloping demand curve.
yeah,
Everyone has seen one. But there's only one way to measure that. A real demand curve, the only way is by using the victory methodology. The victory methodology is what allows you to make that demand curve. Now, what is then the optimal price? Well, that depends on the entrepreneur. There are entrepreneurs out there that want to maximize revenue. Well, then you need to choose a point that maximizes for revenue. But there are also entrepreneurs out there that say, I don't care about revenue. I care about profit. I want to have profit. Well, then there might be a very different price point. So depending
mhm,
on your business objective, which is not the same for every company, by the way,
yeah.
it's going to have a different optimal price point.
Hmm. Yeah, and from the practical standpoint of view, so how does it work? How many people do usually enter the room? It's online, or is it online? And how long does it usually take? And how does
Not
it work?
necessarily online. It really depends on the business question.
Hmm.
So if
Hmm.
it is just a concept and you want to measure trial, meaning that you're only interested in measuring whether you can convince someone to pay for it and how much they're willing to pay for it, then it's perfectly fine just to present them a picture, right? And that can be
Hmm.
done online.
Hmm.
But that's not sufficient to have a product grow, because if it is a perishable product, something that you will find in the shelves in the supermarket, then you might want to also test whether they actually like the product after
Yeah,
purchasing it,
yeah,
and whether they would be willing to pay for it again.
yeah,
Uh, so then you go offline. You do what's called in-home users placement type of study, and that's a different setup, of course, because then you need to have the respondent to try out, to experience the product, to try it out, to consume the product maybe, and then to ask them how much they're willing to pay for it. So it really again, it depends on the business question.
yeah. So pretty much a business comes into you with a problem, and you create a customized solution every single time, working pretty much as a consultant, but a company.
Yes,
All
yes.
right, understood. And then understanding that, I saw that you guys use quite a bit of AI, and I wonder how does it come into play with the methodology and the framework that you have described just now?
So AI comes into play in ways you probably don't expect, because the way I just described is pretty straightforward,
Yeah,
doesn't require anything fancy, and that's true. Now, um, as important as understanding how much someone is willing to pay is why is someone willing to pay that much.
yeah,
So in any study, we'll ask who the person is, but also what are the driving motivations. Now, AI can help us come up with the right questions in getting a deeper understanding of the why. So this is where AI can play a role. Now, some people claim AI can also predict what people are willing to pay. I would say I'm not convinced of that. AI has a lot of benefits, can be incredibly valuable, and it can help us definitely ask better questions in understanding the why. But can AI replace a human being to provide us better understanding how much someone is willing to pay? I would say no.
hmm, hmm. So pretty much consumers' decision to buy, it's like this black box that so far is impenetrable by the computational power of today's algorithms.
I would say so, yes. And also,
Mm,
you have to uh, consider the question whether it's even a computational challenge to start with. It might be just
mm,
tasting. So if it's a tasting, what does it mean? It means you like something. Okay, do you need to justify why you like something? No, you don't. It is what it is. You like
mm.
something for
Yeah,
reasons that are yours
yeah,
privately and your history.
yeah, yeah.
Can a bot know about that? No, they cannot. They need to investigate. They would need to ask you questions. Can they replace you in providing that insight? No, they cannot.
Hmm.
And then here comes the most important restriction. Can an AI bot spend money? No, they cannot. So
Yeah.
as they cannot be the customer in this story, we'll have to focus on actual human beings.
Hmm. Hmm. And you've been working in Veylinx for 9 years already, and we can agree that over the last 2 years, nobody really talked about AI, and then suddenly everyone's talking about it. There's all this stock growth and so many new applications and updates and things coming in. Like, how did that impact your business over the last 2 to 3 years?
In really great ways, because AI has shown the possibilities, but also the limits of computation. So, for example, when it comes to our ability to develop features in software, that has exponentially grown. Like we can do a lot more with fewer software engineers. So they became 10x developers practically overnight. And that's
Yeah,
fascinating to witness, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, Also, it helps everyone to have a bunch of words that are maybe unstructured, and then have a bot to make it in a coherent whole. That's also now possible. So that's great. So you can clearly see when the problem is well defined, AI has truly unlocked something great there. Huge time savers. Uh,
yeah,
Things can be achieved that normally couldn't be achieved. However, at the same time, we're discovering more than ever that computation cannot replace human beings. In fact, in fact, it introduces risks and dangers. So let me give you an example.
please.
If we are doing an online study and we need to survey among human beings, how can you distinguish a bot from an actual human being?
I don't think it's possible. And if so, I think the bot would answer in very precise and time interval precise ways, I guess.
Exactly. So
Not
now,
in a human way.
exactly. So now suddenly we're dealing with this risk, quality assurance issue where,
Mm, mm,
wait a minute, normally we would know for a fact we're dealing with a human being here, but now we don't.
yeah,
In fact, there's a monetary incentive because people get compensated to fill out a survey. There's a monetary incentive to cheat the system.
yeah,
So that is now a big concern within the industry of market research is how do we make sure that we're interviewing actual human beings and not bots?
yeah. I'm pretty sure they already developed AI that can tell if the interviewed person is AI.
Well, that's the problem. You
Yeah,
have the a war of bots right now,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and there's no solution to this problem yet.
Hmm. Hmm. And I guess pivoting further on that discussion, as someone who has a background in economics, then philosophy, PhD, that is around marketing, how do you see the future development of AI and its broader impact on society? I know it's a heavy question, but I'm really curious about your perspective.
It's gonna be an extension of our minds, and I think also the interface is gonna become simpler and simpler. Right now, we're typing to prompt an
Yeah.
AI. We might even use our voice, but actually
Yeah.
all those ways are inefficient. So there will become a time where you might even get ideas presented and you just need to say yes or no, like, is this what you want or not? Like
Yeah.
it will go faster and faster, and there might be
Yeah.
even, and people are even thinking about linking the human mind to a machine. So that's no doubt happening. And that will unlock wealth in ways that we probably have never seen before. um, However, at the same time, there's going to be a new appreciation for the arts. So I remember when I was studying, like, hey, if you're studying anything hardcore engineering, that's where you can make most money, right? I think right now the advice is the exact opposite.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're in anything that is so structured that a bot can learn about it,
Yeah.
whether that's
Yeah.
auditing or maths or anything like that, or software engineering,
Mm, mm,
um, um, it's going to become a commodity, basically. So
yeah.
now what's going to be valued? Valued is going to be
Mm,
in art.
yeah.
So where people thought that no money is going to be made, now that's where the money is going to be made.
Yeah. It's somewhat of a Keynesian perspective because he wrote the essay for the future generations where he mentioned that at some point technology will keep decreasing our labor time and eventually we'll have to figure out what's our meaning outside of repetitive work tasks. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
I
and
think.
it
Mhm.
was already part of the economic progression as we were becoming
Yeah.
wealthier, but it's only
Yeah.
going to be accelerating fast.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I really want to highlight what you said before. I really thought about it as well because before, say 10 years ago, you wanted to develop an app, you would need a team of nerds who are very smart to code it. But right now, all you need is ChatGPT and a good idea. So now, number one becomes an idea and the quality of an idea that you want to present. And there's more uh, emphasis on authenticity and the creativity of ideas as opposed to their technical execution. Would you agree
Well,
with that?
in fact, when I started out, they would always make fun of the founder. That's the idea guy, right? Like, hey, he's the idea guy. Don't take him seriously.
Yeah,
To code it, and that's it.
yeah,
Now that stopped being a joke. That became now reality. Like the
yeah,
idea guy is actually
yeah,
able now to get the app going without
yeah,
you, you know.
yeah, yeah. No, I had a similar experience. I think 3 years ago, I tried learning how to code before ChatGPT. So I would get a book and I would code like a simple game where you would eat a star with like a little monster. But anything past that, I would just wonder, how do I even start building this? But right now, the system is pretty straightforward. I did 12-hour course on basics of Python. Then I go and find a basic project, put it in ChatGPT, it breaks it down for me, and then I can just verbally tell it to change certain things, and it does it for me. And suddenly I have like this power of computation gods at the fingertips, and I'm not even like the person who usually codes. And now I extrapolate that over the next 5 to 10 years, and it's mind blowing. Like it kind of empowers people so much.
Yeah, well, not only that. I mean, just to add to your own experience, already today, as we speak, it's November 2024. There are solutions out there. Think of Replit, for example, where you literally don't need to know any coding. You just
Yeah,
describe the app.
yeah,
You just
yeah,
literally just describe the app,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it will deploy it for you. Like that's
yeah,
how far we are today.
yeah, yeah. Just verbal instruction, which turns into a result. Yeah, we living the future right now, and I feel like over the last 2 years, three maybe, people don't really realize how fast we are going. I talk to people around me in my degree, people at the working events, and everyone kind of lives their life as if we're living through the most regular times right now. Even though I feel like these are the times that we're gonna refer back to later down the line as like revolutionary. Do you think so?
No doubt, no doubt. But I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, and that is the scariest part to me. Yes, we're just getting
It
started.
is. But I also want to humble and also curb everyone's enthusiasm in that sense. That AI is gonna introduce a lot of new stuff, is gonna unlock a lot of capabilities, but at the same time, there are limits to AI that we know of already, and any stories about them taking over or getting. I think people don't appreciate the existence of what makes a human unique. Uh, People, I know it's a philosophically deep conversation and deep debate when it comes to whether free will is deterministic or there's an actual free will. But I think now with AI, you will notice that it's going to become clear that actually, a deterministic view of the world is actually much less likely. Like it would
Oh,
not
really?
yeah, it's wouldn't explain why humans think and behave the way they are. um and there are hints in biology, by the way.
Hmm.
So for example, a very active field of research is the study of nematodes. And nematodes are is the smallest possible organism you can think of. It's like a cell-like organism. So it has like hundreds of cells, not trillions. Like human beings is trillions of cells. This has hundreds of cells, so we know every single thing about it, and we still don't know how to predict its behavior.
Yeah.
So that means, how come this complicated AI model with billions of parameters,
Hmm.
we know exactly, we can predict exactly how it behaves
Hmm.
because it's fully deterministic at the end of the day, while a nematode, which is way simpler, we cannot predict its behavior.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
something strange is going on here, and I think that is also gonna. I think it's gonna reassure a lot of people, like, hey, there's something unique about us humans and animals out there. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, to an extent, you can predict behavior, but it's within limitations of a certain environment. Like in a broad, wide environment, I don't think you can. For example, there's lab rats. There's been so many experiments on them where they created different types of behaviors. So I guess we can predict actions to an extent, right? But not in a broader, open environment.
The thing is, um, even lab rats, they will act in ways that you cannot predict. And
Mm,
then how come? How come you could not even predict it going left or right? Like that simple of a prediction. Why can't you predict that? Well, we can predict that of an AI model. If we deduce the full code, we know exactly why it did it, the things it did.
mm,
We know
mm,
exactly. But why we're not with the lab rat? What's going on exactly here? While with a particle, like something that is non-biological, we can predict it. We know for a fact how it's going to behave.
yeah.
Even in quantum mechanics, we would even know the probability distribution. But
Hmm.
but but there's something peculiar, unique about
Hmm.
organisms that we still haven't figured out yet. And there's even we don't even know how to go about the problem. By the way, we don't even know how to go about it. Like AI
Yeah.
can't help us with this
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Because we walked into building AI without knowing the answers.
exactly.
Anyways, yeah. So it's the building block, and you can't build a bigger structure on top of a smaller structure most of the time. And I'm just wondering, help me out. I had a little dilemma over the last few months on the second year of my business degree, because I feel like the way I am studying right now and the whole education system comes from the old times. I memorize text from a book, I come into exam, and I just tick off the right multiple choice questions. And then on the other side, I see all these AI developing, becoming more powerful, multiplying in computational power like every few months. There is robots walking and reusable spaceships, and I feel like I am learning how to ride a horse when I see a car just pass by. You know, how do I deal with that?
How do you deal with that?
Yeah,
The world is becoming more competitive in ways that
yeah,
you didn't predict.
yeah.
Um, the way you deal with it is you're always interfacing with the world, and you're trying to find your role within the world out there, right? You want to be able to make a good living. You want to
Yeah.
have fun, and that's your interface. Now, you shouldn't forget. You shouldn't forget things Let me give you an example. Something I started to learn only recently,
Hmm.
that we stopped appreciating, namely. So the way how I grew up here in the Netherlands is I don't need to memorize anything. You have books, you have a mobile phone, you have computers. You don't need to memorize anything. So we never took the effort to memorize anything. In fact, the only thing I had to memorize as a kid in primary school was either places in geography or math tables, right? Like multiplication.
Multiplication, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Those I don't remember, and sometimes, I had to learn a couple of foreign words, and memorize those.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Hmm.
Later on, I learned that it was very common. This is centuries ago, to memorize whole books, and it
Hmm.
would make you a superhuman. So I was thinking, wait a minute, this memorizing of books, is that something that you can still do? Is it still a thing? And it turns out there are people out there, and I mentioned already one person, Chomsky, for example, who has the ability to memorize, who has a photographic memory,
Yeah,
or
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
yeah. But there are also people who just take the effort of memorizing books,
Hmm.
and they will have a competitive edge. Now, is memorizing a book a fun thing to do? No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's
Soul
it,
crushing.
it's so crushing, it's tedious and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it give you a competitive edge
Hmm.
today? Yes, it does.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're memorizing the right book, it will definitely give you a competitive edge.
True.
And here's the point I'm trying to make. Now, even though we're getting in this world of AI and whatnot, don't make the fatal mistake. I would say fatal mistake of now suddenly, you know what, I'm going to get used to the convenience. Now I'm going to even become lazier than ever. I remember when Google came out, there's studies out there, by the way. When Google came out as a search solution, as a search engine, that people's memory went down.
Yeah.
And even in my day, by the way, when I was a kid, one thing I used to memorize of all my friends is their phone numbers, because was no there was
Yeah.
no
Yeah. Yeah. I remember those times. Yeah.
yeah, there was no
I had that
mobile
as well. Yeah.
there was no mobile phone to
Yeah.
use where you could store the numbers.
Yeah.
You just memorize the numbers and then you
Yeah.
dial them.
Yeah.
Again, these are things you can still decide, you using your free will to decide to invest in, and
Yeah.
that's what you need to be strategic about. So long story short, yes, don't try to learn the stuff that can easily be done with AI and other stuff, but at the same time, don't become too weak of a muscle,
Hmm.
where you actually become less competitive, less efficient. uh, you can make your life a lot easier by just doing this
Hmm.
one-time investment in either memorization or learning certain skills. Languages, I would say, is still very powerful, because AI is not going to solve that one for you. It's
I
not.
mean, someone would argue you have some verbal device that you speak into that produces speech of another language. You know.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So AI is not solving that problem for you. So this is
Hmm.
where you need to still make an investment.
Hmm. Yeah. I need to plug this real quick, otherwise my
Of
computer
course,
dies.
of course.
Ah, all right. The interview is saved. Beautiful. Now, I really like how we started at your interest in economics. Then we went into the Veylinx and how it uses AI, and suddenly it's a broad discussion about the future of humanity, considering what's happening. So to highlight, you encourage students to continue studying the old-fashioned education, regardless of the technology coming in. I think the example you gave me really made me think about Steve Jobs taking the calligraphy class in Stanford while he was building computers or
Yes.
about to build computers, and how that completely foreign perspective has helped him to formulate his business case and make
Yes.
it contribute to its success.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's a great example. I mean, I myself, had the privilege of learning how to have beautiful handwriting. So not calligraphy, but just regular handwriting.
Yeah,
Um,
I just looked at my notes. I can't say it's great. Yeah,
and again, I had to invest in that day
yeah,
in, day out,
yeah, yeah.
uh, uh, learning an art. And that is something you either have it or not, and you
Hmm.
only get richer by that.
Yeah.
So again, these technological advancements is giving us more time. Well, we can use that time to either invest it in ways so that we can make our lives better in the future, or just waste them. And what's wasting? Yeah, you can just have a good time without any gain in the future. And that's just unfortunate. That would be very short-sighted. In fact, there are more incentives than ever to invest in your future because you get to live longer.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
Although I still believe there's a hard limit to the lifespan, although others might disagree when it comes to longevity, but that's a different discussion. Invest in skills that would make their life better, not only easier but also much more enjoyable.
Hmm. Yeah. I think this is a beautiful conclusion to the discussion. We had the 40-minute mark. I mean, thank you so much for the value and for the insight. Your perspective was really interesting to listen to. I definitely learned a lot for myself, and I'm sure others did too. So, yeah, I really appreciate this. Thank you for your time.
You're most welcome.